Hi everyone, it's Stasia from CrochetEverAfter.com, and right now I'm going to show you how to increase in single crochet when you're working in the round. This stitch is going to be used a lot when you're doing amigurumi or stuffed animal projects, or even you can use it for just a simple beanie. So let's get started and I'll show you how to do it. Alright, to begin increasing in single crochet in the round, first you need to create your rounds. So to do that, you first put a slip knot. I'm going to show you my little crocheting trick for a slip knot real quick. This is the way I always do my slip knot. I try to teach the correct way, but this is my easy crocheting slip knot. I just wrap my yarn twice, grab the first one, pull through, so I have like a little loop, and then I yarn over again and pull through, and that's my slip knot, and it comes out completely. So I don't know how I learned this. This is just my funny little slip knot. You can do your slip knot however you like, but I thought I'd share that with you so you could see how I actually make my slip knot in real life, not the normal way to do it. So I'm going to chain 2 to begin this round. I'm not going to do the magic adjustable loop. I have that tutorial up if you would rather do that. I'm going to show you another way to work in the round that some people like better. It sometimes doesn't create as closed around as a magic adjustable loop, so if you're not concerned with your hole being completely closed, you can use this technique. So you chain 2, and then in the second chain from your hook you're going to do 6 single crochets. So it's going to create a round because you're putting so many into this chain. And of course you skip that first chain to create the height. So I'm just going to do 6 single crochets into this second chain. And if you make the chain really tight, you can almost create like a magic adjustable loop where the hole is so closed you won't be able to see it. If you make the chain looser, it'll be easier to work into, but then you might have a visible hole. So let's say I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I always count back from the loop on my hook. It's a little easier than trying to figure out which one was my chain 1 and which is my first stitch. I always go backwards. I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's my chain 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to work in spirals. So to do that, I don't actually join my round. You work in spirals a lot when you're doing amigurumi. Those are the stuffed animal creatures. So you don't join your round because you don't want an actual visible seam when you're working your animals. You want them just to have kind of a easy body, and the spirals work very, very good for those. So to do that, I'm going to insert my hook into the first stitch that I made of my first round, and I'm going to do a single crochet. So instead of slip stitching to join, I'm just going to do 1 single crochet. Now we have to increase, because if I just did 6 stitches in the 6 stitches I already have, all I'm going to do is create a big, long, narrow tube. If that's what you need, then go right ahead, but this is an increasing tutorial, so let me show you. This is my locking stitch marker. I use these when I'm working in spirals so that I don't have to keep track of where my first stitch is. Some people like to put them in their last stitch. I like to put them in the very first stitch of the round that I do. And I like the locking stitch markers because no matter what I do, it's not going to fall out. There are stitch markers you can get that are open. The ones that are completely closed and have nothing, those are for knitting. Don't buy those. You cannot use those in crochet. You'll never get them out. You'd have to cut them with plastic cutters or something. So to increase, what you're going to do simply is make another single crochet in the stitch that you just made your first single crochet. So if you need to pull on it to try to find it, you can do that. You see here's my 2 loops from my single crochet, and you see I still have my hole there. So I'm going to insert my hook back into that same stitch and make another single crochet. Because I am working with single crochet to create a flat round piece, I have to increase my ring by 6 stitches every round. That's the geometry of it to make it lay flat, is it has to be increased by 6 stitches. Since I did 6 for the first round, now you know why I did 6, I must do 12 for this round, which means I have to do 2 stitches in every stitch around. So I've done 2 already, so my next stitch I'm going to increase again. So I go into the stitch and do a single crochet, and then I go back into the stitch and do another single crochet. Then the next stitch I must do 2 again. And I'm going to show you the difference between joining your round every round and not. I'm going to show you a sample. Here is 2 more. And I'm also going to show you what happens if you stagger your increases. Obviously on this second round, because you have to do increases every single stitch, you can't stagger your stitches. You also can't stagger your stitches on your third round. So you see I've done 2 in every single round, and I've come to my stitch marker, so I just remove my stitch marker so I can do my next round. And my next round, because I have to increase by 6 again, I do another increase, but I put 1 single crochet in between each increase. So I'm going to do 2 single crochets in this first stitch. So first I do 1, and then I grab my stitch marker. And with a stitch marker, what you can do is when you're working these increases, you can count by 3s. So what that means is I can do 1, and then I can say 2, which is my second one in the same stitch, that's my increase, and then I'm going to do 1 regular single crochet. So I can count by 3 with a stitch marker. So I can count 1, 2 in the same stitch, and then 3 in the next stitch. And what that does, it just tells me that I'm doing a grouping of 3 of the same kind of stitches. If I didn't have this stitch marker, what I would need to do is count all the way up to 18, because I'm going to have 18 stitches after. So I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so I could keep track, because I don't have a join. So trying to find where that first stitch is can be a problem when you get really big. So I'm going to count in 3s again. I have 1, 2, 3. And if you get to this marker and you're not on 3 on this last stitch, you probably missed an increase somewhere, and you can just work backwards till you find it and frog. They call it frogging because you rip it, rip it, rip it, get it, rip it, rip it. So I'm doing 2 and 1. So I've increased this next round by 6 stitches, which makes it lay flat. If I wanted my round to start to curve so I could make a body part for a stuffed animal or a little tiny bowl, I would stop increasing and I would just start doing 18 stitches around, and it would start turning and going into a cylinder. So the next grouping would be groups of 4. So I would do 2 increases in my first stitch and then 2 single crochets. And that's going to give me 6 increases all the way around. I like to increase the first stitch. So I always do increase and then single crochet, increase. So it's always my first stitch. Some designers like to make the last stitch the increase, so they'll say single crochet, increase of the group of 4 is what I'm referring to. It just depends on the designer. Some designers will stagger the increases. You can start to stagger on this round. And what that does, let me show you my examples. So the red are all of my increases. So when you increase in the same spot on every round, you get the spiral effect. So when I like the spiral effect, I like making beanies, and I like having that spiral look on the top. This is what that looks like in all yellow. You can kind of see these little spots here of the spiral coming out. In smaller yarn, it's even more noticeable. You'll actually see the total spiral. These are worked in spirals. If I stagger my increases, so this one I did increasing just in various spots, the same amount of stitches in between. So each round, like this last round, I just moved the increase, but I still kept 5 stitches in between. So I didn't like stagger and do 3 and then increase and then do 7 or anything like that. You still want to keep the same number of stitches in between your increases, but that's going to create more of a circular effect with no visible spiraling out from the center. And it's a little bit more like, you can kind of see that this is more of a hexagon shape before you start just doing regular single crochets to round it out. This one's more of a circular shape. It still has a little bit of the points from where the increases are, but not quite as hexagonal as this one. So putting your increases in certain areas is going to give you different outcomes. And if you wanted to join your rounds, that's going to give you, it'll still give you the spiral effect. It's just that you'll have a seam. So if you're working something like my Fair Isle beanies, you have to join your rounds, because when you work in spirals, if you look here, the stitches, they are curving. They're not on top of each other. When you join, your stitches are more up and down. When you don't join and work in spirals, your stitches will slant as you work, and they'll keep slanting, and so you can't do pictures as well when you're working spirals. Plus, when you finish, you're going to have a visible spot where your stitch is a little bit higher than where you're joining. So what I do, let me show you this one because this is a good example. So if I cut my yarn right now, you can see that I have this big gap right here where it doesn't look very nice. So what I can do to make that less visible is do a slip stitch fasten off. So I insert my hook into the next stitch, and then I slip stitch it, and that kind of brings that last stitch down, so that if I fasten this off, now it's not as noticeable as it would have been. It's still a little bit off, but not as much. And if you're working amigurumi, the stuffed animals, usually you're moving these and closing them, or you're going to be sewing. So that's not going to be a problem at all, because you're going to close it into a ball, or you're going to make feet and stuff them and then sew them to something. So you're not going to see that offset in your join. And that is how you increase in the round.